one podcast, mining the Magic the Gathering community for salt. This is the Howling Salt Mine.
It's the Howling Salt Mine. The Howling Salt Mine.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Howling Salt Mine podcast, the podcast where we delve into those salty mines of the Magic the Gathering community, find the salty stories, the salty posts that we love, put them in our mine cart, and bring them right back up to you, our dear prospectors at home. As always, I'm your host, Sam, and I'm joined this week with my singular one co-host, Mike. Say hey, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Mike, indeed. And before we go any further, you know we got to shout them out, our nice tier patrons. And this week we have Accidental TPK, Alex Balix, Crean Bean, Prime Speaker Florian, Dr. Black, ZZ, and that's it.
Nice.
I don't know why I said it as if there's another one.
You were ready. You were ready for another, because maybe that'll be you.
I thought you were going to say ZZ Top for sure. I thought ZZ Top was a patron and I was going to be blown away.
And the band, ZZ Top.
The entire band. We really need to get on them for account sharing at this point, because they're not supposed to do that.
Hey, all I can say is girls go crazy for a sharp-dressed man. Am I right?
You say that so often.
You do. That is like
at this point.
It's a Sam catchphrase.
The ZZ Top fans are going nuts right now. They're
So many
pumping their
references
fists,
to
they're
this
hooting
episode,
and
yeah.
hollering in their cars on the way to work. Well, you may have heard another voice in the minecart today. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's me, Tony.
Oh shit, Tony is here.
Hi, what's up, the podcast listeners? It's me, Tony, part of Howling Salt Mine crew.
Uncanny.
What do you? That's just what I sound like. You can't. Can you be uncanny for sounding like yourself?
I mean, I think for this week specifically, I will take off the AI voice filter that I usually put on Tony. Just so people can really hear his actual voice
And hear why we apply the voice filter. Yeah.
And hear why we put that on. But no, today we have our friend Dan, Moderately Anonymous MTG, back in the mine with us. What's going on, Dan?
Not too much, brother. How you doing?
Doing well. Our friend from obviously the YouTube channel and the Twitch stream, Moderately Anonymous MTG, but also our rival podcast, Herald's Horn.
Yeah, we're here to beat each other up on an audio medium for everyone's entertainment.
You know, we're often walking down an alleyway in the Bronx and just snapping our fingers at each other. It's and like bursting into song, doing a little razzle dazzle.
I've been working on my heel kicks.
Fighting over forbidden love. I'm kind of forgetting the thread of West Side Story, but I think it's
I
something like that.
only know the first verse of Maria, though, so it's really embarrassing on my part because I think you guys have both done the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, we do a little bit more choreographed dancing on the Howling Salt Mine. Again, audio medium, people don't see it, but just know that we are sweating to the oldies and moving our feet every episode.
I keep telling Cal and Emma that we should do it more often, but they're not as receptive.
And you're also not reading my viewer mail that I send in every single week that says the exact same thing. So it's
I keep
kind of
throwing
weird.
it in the trash before you can get to Cal, but secretly I don't want to do it.
Printing it out from the email and throwing it into the trash.
And then I delete the email because I have access to the email. I just like the physical ritual of it all.
It really, I mean, analog, it's just so much better, you know? Well, Dan, it's been a while. Since we've had you on the show. The last time we had you on was episode 77. HSM 77 with Moderately Anonymous MTG, Uncard Flicks, and Spite Pacts.
Ooh, Card Flicks. You got the Card Flicks episode?
Yeah.
That's a real classic. It must be in the library, I would imagine. What episode are we on now? Because we're far past 100, right?
This one will be 120.
Nice. Pretty close to 420 and 69 when you think about it.
Yeah, closer to 69 than it is to 420. So this is a bit of a hornier episode.
What?
Yeah, no, he's right. I felt that way coming in the Zoom call.
especially because we're going to be talking about something that's got the whole community horny right now. The new bands.
Yes. the most momentous thing that has happened since episode 77, potentially.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
move aside Sam's child. That's way out. This is the biggest deal.
Move aside kid, move aside the time that we invented card flicking. Now it's fan talk.
And of course, if you want to know what makes Dan salty, and I think we talked about why you got into content creation in that episode, probably.
I think so.
I don't fucking know. You should find out, listener, and go listen to episode 77 and then come back to this one.
Oh, you want them to pause right now and go listen to the other one and then...
Yeah,
exactly.
We're just letting people know the appropriate like machete order for Howling Salt Mine for the complete Dan experience.
The machete order.
I think you should probably like buy a second cell phone, sign up, and subscribe to the podcast again on your new cell phone.
True. Yeah.
And then you can listen to them both episodes at the same time.
Yep. I totally agree. Yeah. Just split your thoughts in half, dual mind, and 2 earbuds. You will need to buy more AirPods, but that's fine. That's fine.
Because we don't want people just listening just to like up the downloads, right? We want you consciously listening twice. That's the only way.
Yeah.
It really benefits us at all. Yeah.
Podbean only tracks the downloads if it's a real like considerate listen. If it's in the background, we don't get the metrics.
I hope you're taking notes.
Sorry, people doing this while you wash the dishes.
Yeah, you better be sitting down and digesting this episode.
We've all got a cup of coffee and our glasses on right now.
All right, well, let's jump into it. So, folks, some bans happened. This is coming out a week and some change after the bans hit.
We're a little slow.
Ooh, yeah, rough. My podcast has already covered this. Clearly, your listeners have already heard my thoughts on this on my podcast. So.
They've probably heard everybody's thoughts. We're probably coming out to the point where our thoughts are stale, and that's good. That's what we're here for. I like that.
I don't want to be cutting edge. I want everyone to get it out of their system and then just get reminded a little bit, you know?
Yeah, I think like you can either have like cutting edge news or you can have the really kick-ass songs and production that Sam does. And like, I would rather have the songs and production.
You can have one or the other. We are not nimble enough with the amount of editing that we do to pop out an episode quickly. We just simply cannot. But hey, whatever. It's all good. So the bands that happened last week are as follows: Nadu, the Wise Bird, Mana Crypt, Jeweled Lotus, and Dockside Extortionist. Notably, this is like the first time in a really long time, I think if ever, that we've gotten 4 bans at once in Commander, and 3 very impactful bans to a lot of like high powered decks out there. Of course, like the cEDH meta gets impacted a lot. Like obviously a lot has happened in the last couple of days. More will probably happen in the next week. Sam from the editing room will probably hop in if anything like crazy has happened that needs updating on this episode. I don't want us to be too stale, but hey, you never know.
It'd be amazing if you had to come back and be like, actually, everyone quit playing EDH over the past week and a half. No one plays it anymore. Sorry, no one knows what this is about.
Wizards of the Coast took over the rules committee and unbanned everything.
Well, they didn't unban everything, but that is some prediction, Mike. So obviously a lot has happened in the last week, so I am chiming in from the editing room just to give a little bit of an update. On September 30th, yesterday, at the time that I'm recording this segment, just in case there's any new changes that happen, there's a joint announcement from the Rules Committee and Wizards of the Coast that WotC will be taking over the responsibility for managing the Commander format moving forward. I'm not going to get too deep into my opinion on this yet. We'll probably talk about it in a future episode. So let's get back to it. So what are your initial reactions with these bans? Like, obviously, we've had a couple days to digest it. I think a lot of the initial reaction was shock. I personally was. I didn't see really any of these coming except for Nadu. And I didn't expect so many at once. I think that's kind of like the biggest thing. And we're seeing people who are angry on the cEDH side, and we're seeing people who are angry on the casual side. And like specifically like people who want to play high powered casual and run Dockside and Mana Crypt and Jeweled Lotus for their, 8 mana commanders and shit like that. What are your initial thoughts about this ban?
I thought it was great. My initial thought when I looked at the list, because of who sent it to me, I was like, that's a funny joke, buddy. Ha 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 ha. And then I logged onto the internet and I was like, whoa, wait. And my initial reaction was that I tweeted this out. I was like, I think this is the best thing that's ever happened to EDH, maybe ever. And I think I stand by that. I'm very excited about these bans. As someone who plays primarily cEDH, across the board, I think fundamentally, like the reason why they did it makes a lot of sense to me. And it falls in line with what they want the format to be like. And me as a cEDH player who is sick of like not having to think about anything because Dockside Extortion exists and you can make 8 million mana for no reason.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be challenged in MTG again. It'll be fun.
I have a very similar feeling, particularly like I know we'll break down each card a little bit, but
yeah,
I think the thing that's most interesting to me is sort of the breadth of cards that they were willing to hit. Like you have Mana Crypt, a really strong thing that has been around since the dawn of the format. Then you have Dockside, a somewhat recent thing that has been around and printed only in Commander products, right?
Well, Double Masters as well, but that's like supplementary product, so same kind of thing.
So never like standard or some of the other like
not modern legal or anything like that.
Legal things, exactly. And then you have Jeweled Lotus, which is an only built for Commander product. Also an extreme chase card for the format. So you get like these three that hit all strong, but kind of from different eras of Commander's history a little bit. And then like Nadu, which I feel like no one is shocked by, and everyone saw it get banned in Modern, maybe saw someone show up at the LGS with it and went like, oof, that fucking sucks. Then wasn't shocked that it was banned. There's tons of busted Commanders out there. I think very reasonable for them to ban something that they see as a frequently terrible play pattern to play into. But I think it's really the two rocks and Dockside that is like the most shocking, particularly to the majority of players here.
Yeah.
But I agree with what Dan said. Like they were pointing out, you don't have to think. And the day before the bans were announced, I was playing a game and someone cast a tutor or something, and we joked, well, there's only one thing to get.
Yeah.
Because cEDH was a little bit there, unless you were getting Thassa's to like end the game and win with like some, pact because you had it in hand. Like you were tutoring Dockside. You were putting Dockside out, and it was going to give you that explosion of mana that you needed to actually set off the rest of the turn of doing like interesting stuff. So it did kind of reduce the format to like who can land the Dockside at the right time and like getting a huge amount of mana and benefit from it, or like shut it off. Like there was interaction around it, but it was super warping around that format. So now like I feel like because these staples are removed, you immediately blow open a whole set of brewing that you have to revisit, and like entire decks that need to get rebuilt in a lot of ways, which is, I think, one of the saddest parts. Like there are decks that will suffer greatly and over proportionally compared to the other decks in the cEDH format.
Yeah, I was wondering how you as like Sisei players felt about it. Do you feel like Sisei's like dead in the water now, or like are there enough pivotable points?
We're both pretty down for it. Like
yeah, I think it's one of the big pieces that was really convenient for it, but like Dehada can do a Dockside impression in a lot of the places. There's a lot of space to pivot into like birthing pod stuff. There's just like so many things you can do in Sisei, and you already have like the super dork lines with like Bloom Tender, Faber, or other kind of things. So you already have like one established way. I do think we'll see more people going into like kind of like no bad cards sort of builds in order to catch up and not like be so mana reliant to try and just like eke out these Sisei wins. But I don't know. That's the interesting thing. I think the format will adapt to it. There's other decks like Korvold where you're restarting on almost how you're building the deck to some extent.
We're seeing that with a lot of our patrons right now. Just like we've just kind of been like reeling from the change and seeing people rebrew decks and seeing people kind of mourn their decks. Like we talk about it in our last episode, but we have a cEDH League going on right now in our Patreon, and they got through the first round when these bans hit. So some people were playing Korvold, some people were playing Minsk and Boo, and some people were on like Dargo lists, like Dargo Thras, and a lot of those lists just die without a Dockside. So I think that's like a sad part for sure.
Specifically without a Dockside, a Mana Crypt, and a Jeweled Lotus. Like,
yes.
There are some decks where not only are they using those because those cards are good, but like their mulligan strategy is almost predicated on keeping a hand with like one of them to some extent to like turbo things out. But there are some cool side effects that's like turn one Rhystic Study is harder.
Yep.
And I like that. So there are these other sort of downstream effects of slowing things down that I think we're going to see. And I think that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at their reasoning that they want to, I believe the quote was geometrically reduce the amount of fast mana that you can have in your opening hand.
Yeah.
Like, I do think across the board from casual play to competitive play, that's just going to make for more interesting games.
I think so too. My initial reaction to the ban list was very much like the two of you. I was shocked at first and then pretty quickly leaned into acceptance. And I will say, like, my original view of that new ban list was very much from like a brewer mindset. I wasn't really thinking about like the massive financial impact that, of course, there is one. There's a huge financial impact for like LGSs out there. And as there's been like discourse about it over the last couple of days, you kind of realize that like, yeah, this is a hard ban for the community for a number of reasons. And I think that bears mentioning, like Mana Crypt and Jeweled Lotus for a lot of EDH players and a lot of cEDH players is one of those things that you were saving money to afford or trading in a bunch of cards to like get up to that to be like your crown jewel of your collection. And a lot of people who love to bling out their decks, and especially in cEDH, to some extent, you feel like the format's fairly safe and you're blinging out your deck, especially your favorite signature deck. And then to have a ban like this hit and to have all of that stuff kind of just vanish instantly, I think a lot of people I want to be wary saying the term investment, because I think that makes people think of like, I'm stockpiling like 100 Mana Crypts and I'm going to sell them and put my kid through college. People have spent money and they've spent like emotions on these cards too. And I think that is the part that really hurts. And I think that's the part that has like the community reeling pretty hard, because I think the meta is going to be fine. Like the cEDH meta,
Of course.
like we're saying, I think it's going to recover. Well, I know it's going to recover. It's going to be a little bit slower, and I think that's kind of fine. Like we were in a spot where Rogsai was just fucking winning all the time and was kind of the best deck. And like it's still an amazing deck, but most post Nas or post Necropotence lines in Rogsai relied on casting a Dockside Extortionist or a Mana Crypt or copying a Dockside Extortionist to get that explosive mana to push to the win. And now that's gone. And I think even Timna Crom takes a hit too, because like turn one Croms aren't going to be happening.
Yeah, Jeweled Lotus is an important backup plan for that deck for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of interesting things that's going to happen in the cEDH meta with this ban. But like there's just this emotional weight to the new bans that it's kind of like crushing the community a little bit right now, which is interesting. And people are fucking mad and people are being fucking stupid too. I will just say, like people threatening stuff, like fuck all that stuff. If you're doing that, you're a turd.
Listen, I didn't do that, Sam. So you can stop looking at me.
Damn.
We know you did.
But yeah, like that stuff I think is pretty abhorrent. You can be passionate about your hobby and you can be frustrated with bans and still not be like a massive piece of shit. I don't think that's a shocking stance to take,
You'd be surprised.
Exactly. But that's the thing. It's like you'd be surprised. People are going crazy out there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's certainly a lot of doomerism going around. And I think it's largely just because everyone is not certain of what the future of cEDH is going to look like, because no one has told them what it's going to look like yet, because nobody knows yet. Obviously, like it's people like us and other content creators and like cEDH grinders that are going to like find out what the future of the meta looks like and then tell it to people, and then everyone will feel safe again. And no one will remember being so mad about this in a month's time. I'm very certain of it.
Yeah, I certainly hope so.
Yeah, I have found like one of the best things that I've done since seeing the bans was playing a deck without any of those cards. And just starting to play more cEDH and remembering you're still playing cEDH. Yeah. You can still do stupid, busted things. Those 3 cards were not the entire format. They were in every deck, but that doesn't mean that they're like what defines playing cEDH. And in fact, now you can play some other things, which is excellent. So are there things that you guys think are opened up now that there's like less Dockside presence in the meta?
Oh man. Well, I think the first one is that I'm going to be jamming all of my fucking mana rocks and land auras in green like turn 1. There's no reason to like sandbag him anymore. I'm just fucking
got nothing to complain about anymore at the table on turn 1 when other people do that now.
Exactly. I'm just slamming it all out like immediately, and I'm cutting, a fair amount of like my artifact hate that I had in my lists that was specifically there for Dockside. Clones, I think, lose some relevancy, but you'll probably still see some.
It depends on what they are, I think, because like Phantasmal Image, I think, is probably the one that goes. Like Phyrexian Metamorph, you can still copy a 1-ring. Flesh Duplicate has some certain like things that it's really good at doing that Phantasmal Image is not, because you can target it.
Yep.
But yeah, I think like any deck running Phantasmal Image and probably like Snap is another one that's about to fall off by the wayside, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, definitely Snap. I didn't even think about that. But I think that's kind of cool. I don't know. Like, I play this fringy Marath list that the best win in it is Dockside a meal.
Of
And
course.
we're pivoting, and I think it's going to be an interesting list still going to be fringy. I'm still going to have a lot of fun playing it. But I will also say, like, I'm lucky that I have a list that can pivot. Like, I'm changing, 5 to 10 cards in my list to have this pivot. Other people are, like, the poor Corvold players out there are having to carve out like 25 cards to kind of rebuild the monster,
Yeah, that's a deck where, like, if you really want to make it work now, you're looking at like Stormkill and Artist combos, or
Yeah.
doing something with Technomancer or something like that.
Warren Soul Trader.
Yeah.
Food chain shit again.
But the thing that I keep telling people over and over again is that, like, cEDH is about pushing the meta to its limits. The limits are just different now. Like, if you're thinking about like reaching a high score, like the high score might not be as high as it was when all of those cards were legal, but cEDH is still just about meeting that high score, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, I am definitely in the camp of cEDH is EDH. I think, like, the fact that cEDH exists within a casual framework, like a casual rules framework, this social game framework, is a feature and not a bug. I will say, like, there's obviously like a big group of cEDH players that don't feel that way and want to potentially have the format split off and like explore what that might look like. And I think that's going to be really challenging, but I also know that there's some pretty interesting folks in the community like putting their mind towards that and thinking about it. I personally am not like scrambling towards it, but like if something like that were to happen and it was done well with like acceptance from the community and all that kind of stuff, like I could totally be open to it. But I think the split is always going to be a challenge,
Yeah. Brian David Marshall was posting about this yesterday on Twitter and talking about the idea of people like splitting up and doing a cEDHRC. And yeah, just saying, I think his big point was that the Commander Rules Committee is not a thing that can be or should be replicated because it's such a lofty ideal. And clearly it's like not a perfect thing, right? Like it's down to 4 people. People are always imperfect. So like you're never going to be able to manage this format in a way that pleases however many millions of people enjoy playing EDH, obviously.
I mean, and that's the other thing. Like the RC has gotten a lot of heat and a lot of hate from these bans. And, we already talked about how like you shouldn't be attacking people and stuff like that. And it's really unfortunate what's been going down and being directed at those people. But also, like, I feel like so many people don't understand or don't want to sympathize with the thankless job it is to be in that position. Because whenever the RC does a monthly update or a quarterly update and there isn't a change, people are like, well, why are you even fucking doing anything? And then when they do push a change, granted, it was very drastic and shocking. Like, I will say that. But when it does happen, there's a ton of criticism too. It's kind of like they're just going to get criticized no matter what they do.
Oh, absolutely.
Of course. Yeah.
I do think that this ban could have been done slightly differently. Like, I think Nadu was a very safe ban. I see barely anybody complaining about that. Sorry, Tim. I know you're complaining about it. Love you, dude. And
this is Tim Erasure.
And then Dockside, Dockside is one of those things that, like, for a long time, I feel like every single update they were like, we're keeping an eye on Dockside, So I'm not super shocked to see that either. Like, I think it was the last time they talked about Dockside, they were sort of like, we probably won't do anything about it. And it feels kind of like a turn from there. But at the same time, they've talked about Dockside enough where I'm not surprised. And like you said, Dan, I do think that the meta is a little bit more interesting without Dockside. But Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt are kind of interesting ones. Like, I felt very surprised to see those. And I don't know. I think those were the ones that like kind of blindsided the community, and most people could accept the Dockside ban if maybe that came out in isolation. But the fact that it was lumped in with 2 other pieces of fast mana is like the shocking thing,
Yeah.
Yeah. I would posit that I think a lot of people's like frustration with Jeweled Lotus seems to be correlative to how soon they started playing, like before, after that card came out. Because there are so many people now, like it is probably a vast majority of EDH players who play right now, like the number, who have only ever known an EDH that had Jeweled Lotus in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, whereas, I don't know, I've been around long enough that I remember a time well before that. And it does not feel the same way to me, where I hear many people saying it's like emblematic of the format. I personally have not ever felt that way.
Same.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when Jeweled Lotus was spoiled and people were like, this is going to get banned immediately.
Yeah.
It was immediately on their watch list. They tweeted that out like as soon as it was spoiled.
Yeah. And I remember people being like, this is busted. This should be banned. Like, this is too strong. I can't believe they would have less of this should be banned and more, I can't believe they printed this.
Yeah, they're like, they printed Black Lotus into Commander. This is horse shit. Like,
Yeah.
I was actually quite low on it when it came out. I was like, who needs a fucking another Black Lotus? Like, you already got Mana Vault, just cast it.
Well, did you see Mana Vault's price?
Oh yeah,
It's
more now. It used to be $14 when I was a boy.
It's like 60 now.
yeah. It has gone up for sure.
Everyone's like, oh, that's what we'll play instead of Mana Crypt.
Yeah, which has been interesting.
I do think it's a funny thing because they did also mention like Soul Ring as being kind of this pillar of the format. And I think the banning of Mana Crypt makes a lot of sense. If you're saying, hey, this 1 mana artifact that taps for 2 mana is like emblematic of the format, then yeah, maybe something that's 0 mana and taps for 2 mana is better than that and should go.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I saw a ton of people just being super fucking salty about the Soul Ring thing, where they were like, you know, if this card should go, then these other ones should go. But I've also seen people take it so far. People are like, Ancient Tomb should be fucking banned by these rules. Like fucking Crystal Vein, fucking ban that bullshit, you know? I
saw someone say, like, listed off 2 cards. Like, one was like Thoracle, one was a little bit more dubious. And then they're like, or what about Force Fruition? It's like, bro, Force Fruition is a you problem. I don't know how to tell you that. 7 mana blue enchantment. I don't know, man.
The chorus of voices saying different things is also incredibly indicative of how many different varied opinions there are in EDH and how hard of a format it is to manage. And, you know, I think a lot of people would say like, well, they should just not do anything and Rule 0 can take the space of these bans, which to some extent I do agree with. Like, personally, I feel like I was playing Mana Crypt and Dockside somewhat fairly. It's not like something that the community was really like, these need to be banned. Some aspects of the community were talking about that, but like, you know, when it comes to cards like Flash or something, or even like Paradox Engine, like people were really asking for those to be banned and being like, these cards are problems. Like Nadu. People were like, Nadu's a problem. Nadu should be fucking banned. But the discourse wasn't really there for like Mana Crypt or Jewel Lotus and stuff like that.
No,
but it's almost like it just got lumped in with this category and just sort of like caught up in it, catching some strays, I guess.
Well, again, I think like it's like this is them trying to align the format more with what they want it to be for the average player. And I think like I was saying this earlier to someone else that like for a long time, we've been resigned to just the fact that Magic is more powerful than it used to be.
Yep.
But I think that like if you do want this format to be a little bit slower, to be less all about casting gigantic spells really early and like focusing on winning, and you do want to make it a more like beer and pretzels, like social kind of environment, I think that's a great way to do it by taking away this like more egregious explosive engines from the early part of the game.
Definitely. No, that's a really, really good point. And I mean, I think it's going to accomplish the task too. Like, I think a lot of people will still be able to play their lists for the most part. It's just going to be a little bit slower and a little less explosive.
Yeah.
I personally will not be sad to never see any of those cards again.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I play a lot of vintage cubes, so I'll be happy to see Mana Crypt when I open an Impact. But other than that,
yeah, personally, I won't miss Dockside. I do think it has just been, cEDH has been like the Dockside meta for a while, and I think it's going to be interesting to not have it. And I'm excited for that. Like, I definitely still feel for people who are losing their signature decks and stuff like that. But at the same time, like cEDH has had cards banned in the past that have materially changed the format. Flash, Paradox Engine, I mentioned earlier, those completely killed some decks when they were banned. And we've had cards printed that completely killed decks and strategies, like fucking Orcish Bowmasters just absolutely wrecking dorks and pointing everybody even more towards running all the fast mana rocks and getting into Dockside and stuff like that. So I think it's like the ebb and flow of the format to some extent, but also like I do recognize that it's a lot at once and it hurts for sure.
Yeah. I think one thing that people often get messed up about, though, is the fact that like the EDH ban list serves a different purpose than like the ban list in any other format. It's not there to balance the format or like make it perfect, because like the conceit of the game is that it's 4 players. It's a free for all. It's going to be imperfect no matter what because it's so random. But they're trying to just promote a certain kind of atmosphere with their ban list rather than trying to make everything like quote unquote perfect, which of course is at odds with cEDH in the long run. But again, cEDH is just about pushing things to their limits. So whatever the limits are, just keep doing that.
Yeah.
Play to those. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw someone make an analogy to Super Smash Bros, which I thought was pretty apt. Like, there's people playing that competitively, but Nintendo is out here explicitly being like, we want this to be a party game where people are just like
Yeah.
bopping around and doing stuff. So they'll actively make it harder to like have like skill expression and stuff. But you still have people playing those games to their absolute extreme. And that's kind of what cEDH is more so than, okay, well, we'll build a different version of Super Smash Bros. Brawl that does reintroduce all of the stuff from Melee kind of thing.
I know there's a lot of chatter as well about like separating cEDH out. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I think that is going to be a hard task. I do think that there are ways to execute it fairly, but like that divide is always going to exist. Even if there carves out this other format that is like cEDH, it is EDH tangential, but with a slightly different ban list and played competitively. Like, you're still going to have people who just want to play EDH at its strongest. So I think those will always kind of be at odds.
Yeah, I think you hit on it perfectly. If this does happen, if there is some sort of split, like in my mind, the split that would happen is that we're going to see a specifically tournament EDH ban list, because I think that's the only way you can really make this work. These are the people who are like the most passionate about making this split, and like I said, like trying to balance the format that is not made to be balanced. cEDH in and of itself, as much as the C stands for competitive, it is a casual way to play EDH. People are always going to want to do that, and the best way to disseminate information on how to play a thing that we want more people to play is always going to be like through a larger body like EDH. Like, obviously the easiest way to tell someone how to play cEDH is like, well, it's the exact same rules as EDH. It's not like, well, it's like EDH, but you can't play these commanders. You can play these cards. We've changed the hand size. You only get 45 minutes in your round.
When you're player 4, you get an extra draw on your first turn.
Yeah. I do think that we should mention like the efforts from, I think they're calling it the
Triple C.
Yeah, it's called Triple C. I wish I could remember the acronym, but I'm fucking stupid. But it's Louis Stardust, it's Ian, comedian MTG, it is Ken Bauman, and it is Hire. It's sort of serving as like a cEDH committee, like a repository of information. They're trying to make materials that make cEDH easier to get into. They're connecting cEDH communities around the world. It's kind of like this larger effort just to have there be like a body in the community that you can point to and say like, that's where you get the cEDH information. Previously it's been very disjointed between like individual content creators, tournament organizers, and like tournament results from a variety of different events that are occurring. So I think that that's like a really noble effort. And I think if a cEDH RC or anything like that, or something in that sort of way, shape, or form is ever to form, I think it'll be born out of like an effort like that.
Well, I do want to note that their organization is not attempting to be a rules committee in the long run. They are just trying to be like, they want to be a resource somewhere you could like you said, like a central hub where you can just find information about cEDH, as well as being a sort of like barometer of what the meta is like. I don't know if you guys remember the cEDH data project that Squirrel Mob used to run.
Yes, yeah, that's like super old school stuff.
It was a system where like every single month, a really great guy, James Squirrel Mob, would send out this Google essay, and you could like record your games, what you were playing, what seat you're in, all this kind of stuff. He would take and compile all of that data month to month and publish it. And they're sort of trying to do this, but on like a more social scale of like talking to people in the community and like getting a more like, I guess, just like a social barometer of what is going on in different metas and things like that.
I love that. I really, really enjoyed the stuff that Squirrel Mob used to put out. That was like when I first got into cEDH, I would read those and be like, ooh, like what's happening with the meta? YuGiOh has been played 12 more times than last month.
Yeah, like the data was super limited, but the fact that someone was willing to do that kind of stuff, it was so cool. I loved that it was like a part of what was going on in cEDH, which like I think that's so emblematic of cEDH, is that so much of it is just people doing passion projects.
For sure. So, I mean, personally, I think cEDH will be fine. And I will say another thing that is like kind of heartwarming with the whole like cEDH side of this is like, I definitely saw some people who were very frustrated. Obviously, we've seen a lot of frustrated people on Twitter talking about this, in Discords talking about this. And over the course of like the first 2 days since the ban, like where we are right now, I've seen a lot of those frustrated voices calm down, go back to the drawing board with Bruce, and talk about like what the new exciting meta is going to look like. There's obviously still some like hope that there's better representation for cEDH from a lot of folks when it comes to like how the RC does things and stuff. But it is very like hopeful to see a lot of people change their tone after a couple days and just be like, well, maybe this thing will happen eventually, but for the time being, I'm gonna change my list and I'm gonna brew and we're gonna see what this new exciting meta is,
Yeah, I think it's probably important to note that anytime anyone ever says I'm quitting Magic, they're lying to themselves and others around them.
Yeah, that's fair. Tony might quit though because Ob Nixilis sucks now.
No, I fucking hate Nicholas. That card sucks, man. Oh,
There he is.
Dockside Extortionist was my
There he
favorite.
is.
Shut up, Tony. Everyone hates Dockside Extortionist.
Tony.
Fine, I'm going back to the bathroom. I'm having horrible diarrhea.
It's so accurate. It's just so accurate.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Again,
That's
I don't know what you
crazy.
mean. I'm just talking.
It's crazy.
All right, bye, Tony.
Yeah, bye, Tony. Thank you. Thanks for popping in.
Bye, guys.
So this isn't just an episode to talk about the ban list. This is an episode of the Howling Salt Mine. And we do have 3 beautiful salty stories that we're going to read.
But Sam,
Yes, Mike?
what is salt?
I was just going to say that. Thank you for bringing it up.
You're welcome.
What an excellent question.
I got you, Tony.
I got you, Tony. Salt is frustration in the game, as we like to say in the Howling Salt Mine. It is anything in a game of Magic the Gathering that is going to get you frustrated, pissed off, angry, throwing things, or just grumbling and feeling a little bit sulky and sad. It could be getting pub stomped. It could be your favorite card getting banned out of the format. It could be rule zeroing and not fully understanding what you're asking for. And you say, we're going to ignore the ban list. And someone's like, sick, turn 2 time vault. And you're like, oh, no, not like that. I just wanted to play Mana Crypt. A lot of things can make players salty. And we're going to talk about a bunch of them today because we like to talk about salt so we can learn from it and hopefully not be salty in a future game. As we like to say, it is an edu-magicational podcast.
That's just like KRS-One and his edutainment.
I think maybe that's where it came from. I don't know. Edutainment. It's an edge-imagitainment show.
They're adjacent ideas.
Edge-imagine entertainment
Stick the landing.
vacation.
Yeah. He did it. It was like Simone Biles was in the room with us.
So I went through our email earlier today and I found a few stories that have to do with some of the banned cards, mainly Mana Crypt, Dockside Extortionist, and Jeweled Lotus. There might be a Nadu story in here. I don't really remember. We did a bunch of Nadu stories like a couple weeks ago in an episode. And also, I don't know. I don't like Nadu. So Nadu may not get like the shining spotlight in this episode today.
Well, RIP Tim.
Sorry, Tim.
Yeah, sorry, Tim. Tim, we're so sorry.
We haven't said it enough. We're a little sorry.
Sorry, Tim. Should we jump into it? I got 3 lovely salty stories here.
Let's do it.
All right. So this first story comes to us from our buddy Curtis. And this story is called Salty Trades or Lack Thereof. And the story goes, hey guys, I have a funny story. So a while back, I made an Atris Oracle of Half-Truths deck. It's a clone deck / combo deck that ultimately wants to win by looping Choice of Damnations from the graveyard. First of all, Choice of
I'm a
Damnations.
big fan of Choice of Damnations.
Choice
I'm
of
on
Damnations.
I'm on the sender side immediately.
I just need to read this card so people know how fucking spicy this is.
It's the perfect card to cast a bunch of times.
Yeah, it's amazing. So Choice of Damnations, this came from Saviors of Kamigawa. It costs 5 and a black. Sorcery, Arcane. Target opponent chooses a number. You may have that player lose that much life. If you don't, that player sacrifices all but that many permanents. Fucking great card.
It's so amazing. And it's one of those cards where, like, if you say it out loud to someone quickly, they will always be like, so I just pick one. And then you're like, no, you read it.
Yeah, exactly. You pick one, so you're gonna sacrifice all but one permanent. Like,
Yes, pick
that's
one
not
for
it.
sure.
You have to pick a weird number like 10 or 7 or something
I always
like
do 69 or 420.
that. Nice. You lose the game.
Nice.
You lose the game.
Yeah, you can lose.
You lose 69 life. Nice. All right. So now that we know what that is, let's jump back to the story. So we have this Atris deck that loves to loop Choice of Damnations from the graveyard. So I took it to the LGS for its initial voyage and had an amazing first game with some strangers. I ended up winning with a Phantasmal Image and a Tortured Existence looping and cloning Grey Merchant of Asphodel. There were no field ads on the deck during the game. The salt comes after. After the game, one of the other players complimented me about the deck and how he wanted a deck just like it. I was appreciative of the comment and was trying to be helpful, saying, I put the list on Moxfield. You can check it out for inspiration, or something to that extent. Then he pulled out a few high-end cards from his deck, a Dockside Extortionist and a Mana Crypt, and asked for a trade. I, however, had no interest. I just built this deck and wanted to play it myself. So I reiterated, dude, you can sell those cards and make the deck. It's not outlandishly over budget. He got very angry and was saying it's not the same, and he wants to be the only one with the deck. And he started pulling more high-end cards out of his deck, starting to be well over the value of the deck at this point. I started kind of feeling bad for him. So I reasoned with him and told him that maybe after I play enough games with it until I got bored of it, and I can trade it to you later, but I literally just built the deck, so I would like to at least have a couple games with it. To which he refused. And he said it's because of that point I would tamper with it and pull out all the stuff, and he wanted it exactly how I had it right now. I had to go out of my way to buy specific lands and stuff. He ended up getting so offended and flustered that I wouldn't trade him my deck on the spot that he left the LGS early. And beforehand, he was saying that he was going to stay until midnight or so. I don't know. I didn't mean to make him salty, but also his attitude about it made me salty. I'm just curious on your guys' perspective. I think it was ridiculous that he didn't want to just sell the cards that he was trying to trade me to buy the deck on TCG Player or something. And I found it strange that he wanted to be the only one with the deck. Like, dude, that's not how it works. Look around you at how many Pantleza or Zuladoc decks there are. You can't claim a commander. Thanks for reading, and here's the deck list in question below. So this one has Dockside and Mana Crypt in it. It doesn't really have to do with them, but
I wish the listener could have like seen me and Mike's face the whole time you were reading that.
Shock, utter shock.
So, dear letter sender, I've already stated I'm on your side on this, but I will also state at this point that I spent the latter half of that like armchair psychoanalyzing this person, wondering what kind of that's just such a strange way to think. I need that one right now. That's very strange. That's very strange.
Were they gonna destroy it? Like, were they gonna Kaiba it?
Yeah.
You know?
Fully, it feels like they were like, this is like a sort of like holy object. Like, no, you can't take the Holy Grail away from here. You'll swap it out with like a Batman cup or something. I'm no fool.
Yeah. It'll look just the same, but be different.
I also love that, like, they still said that even though the list was recorded on Moxfield, like, you're going to fucking change it. It's like Moxfield tracks history. Like, it's,
you would know.
Yeah, you would be very well aware. It is a real Seto Kaiba kind of thing where it's like, I'm going to buy the 4th Blue Eyes White Dragon and I'm going to fucking rip it up. Or a real, here's another one. It's a real Veruca Salt situation where it's like, I want that shit right now. You got to take this Mana Crypt and this Dockside. And here's more. Here, there's a Nadu in my deck. Take that.
See, here's the thing is I have to wonder, like, what's the breaking point for the letter sender here? Like,
oh man,
how many pieces of power do they have to throw on the pile before you're like, I don't want to play this deck that badly?
Yeah, right. That is the thing. Like, obviously these cards are banned now, but I think at the time,
like, just a Mana Crypt and a Dockside, like at their peak, that's got to be like $250 at least, right?
Oh yeah, for
Not that
sure.
we know. I guess you know how much this deck might cost because you have the link, but I don't have the number in front of my ass. So maybe much more than that.
Once it's over the value, just take them. Buy yourself the next day.
So this list, the list it's a $300 list. So
I'd probably take the money and run personally, but I mean, good on you for wanting to play your Choice of Damnation deck. It's a fun one. Sounds like it was so fun that person lost their mind.
Maybe they had a premonition and they knew about a certain set of bans coming out. And they were like, I need to offload these cards for a functional deck immediately.
We need to find out how many Lotuses that person sold before the ban announcement.
The insider trading. It's so fucking stupid.
It's so funny.
The tinfoil hats these last couple days have been on a little too tight. Also, it's like, I think your brain ran out of circulation, you know, like the blood has been cut off.
As a person who loves drama, that was maybe my favorite part about the ban announcement. I was like, oh, people are going to be messy on the internet and I'm going to get to lap it up like a dog.
Oh man, honestly, I think I have like an electrolyte imbalance. I've drank so much tea over the last couple of days. But yeah, this is just such unhinged behavior. I love
Yeah.
that it's like this person will not accept no for an answer. They're like, you must take my mana crypt. You must take my dockside. Here, take the money out of my wallet. Like, what will it take? Give me this Atris Oracle of Half Truths deck. It's like you can just fucking make your own, dude.
It sounds like the beginning of a horror movie, to be honest, right? Like that's so cryptic and weird. Why are you doing this?
Yeah. I really do have to think that they valued highly taking it away from them.
That's the
Yes.
only thing I can really think of, right? Is that they must have been like secretly so miffed by having lost to it or whatever that they were like, I don't want to play against this anymore. And I would literally pay $300 not to do it.
Exactly. I'll exchange hundreds of dollars of value to not have to deal with this and to get to do it myself. That's a 2-for-1, really.
We don't know if they might have just like taken it home and thrown it into the fireplace and said
It could
nevermore.
have been that.
Cast it into the flames. Yeah, it's a real Weevil Underwood. Hey, Yugi, can I see those 5 pieces of Exodia moment?
Yeah.
Like, were you standing on the edge of a cruise ship going to a cool island for duelists to play cards against each other during this? Because if so, that like really makes a lot of sense. Set and setting, you know.
I love that you keep making allusions to Yu-Gi-Oh! It's going to really satisfy your vast audience of Yu-Gi-Oh! Players.
People love it when I make Yu-Gi-Oh! references.
There's more than there should be. There's more than there should be.
Anyway, back to our Wyvern, the trading card game podcast.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's a real Joey Wheeler versus Bandit Keith moment. You know, I think if people remember when he played against him in the graveyard, like it really is like that. Okay, that's my last one.
It really is like that.
Is that your last one? We'll see.
We got a lot of podcasts left.
Baby
How many cards have we
Dragon.
talked about?
I don't know. I've talked about like a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Well, yeah, this is a ridiculous story. Curtis, I feel for you. I would be shocked. I think if someone did this to me, I would just feel uncomfortable, honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And honestly, I don't think I'd want to take their cards. I would feel bad for taking someone's cards in this weird, desperate moment. I'd be like, I think you actually don't want this to go down this way, you know?
Yeah.
Because next week I'm going to show up with this deck again, and we're going to play the mirror match, and you're going to be shocked that a second one exists.
And that I win with it.
Yeah,
I
and
think
then
regardless
win
of
with
how
it.
you fall on this situation, like I'm asking someone to walk me to my car after I leave that night.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, what do we think the salt rating is for this one?
This is possibly the saltiest story that I've heard as a guest on this podcast.
Wow.
That kind of blew my mind.
Yeah, I can't tell if it's extremely high salt and this person really wanting to deny the deck builder here from being able to play it, or if it's just so low salt because they really enjoyed playing against that deck so much that they really wanted it. It's hard to know without being there, but from the fact that we got this story, I think I know which way it split.
Yeah, I agree with you. I definitely high salt. This is that confusing salt where like I don't even know if I would be angry. I would just feel put off. I would feel weirded out. Honestly, I would be glad that person left early.
Yeah, like this is the equivalent of like your coworker at the office like screaming and then like stomping around and leaving.
Yeah,
Like just
totally.
the exact same vibes of like I don't know what happened. I don't know how to proceed.
Yeah, like I'm uncomfortable. I wish there was an adult here to help me.
I wish there was a super adult.
Yeah. I need someone over the age of 40 to like come help
Need
me
a
out
higher
of this
ranking
situation.
adult to come down
Exactly.
here.
I need an
Regulate.
elder. I need one of my group elders to come in and support me. Are we ready for another salty story?
Always.
Let's do it. Another one.
So this one's a little bit long. So let's all buckle into the minecart. And this one comes to us from one of our patrons, Sean. And this post is titled Salty Sisse cEDH Tournament Recap.
Uh-oh.
And the story goes, hello, salty boys. Just sat down in my lazy boy and sprinkled some salt in my ice cold Bud Light, like my boy Prosper Tomebound taught me. I think that's a deep cut.
Like reference to the podcast?
Yeah, I think it's a deep
Must
cut
be.
reference to Southern
That's too
Prosper
deep for us.
Tomebound. Or like Prosper Tomebound. I exile a card and I make a treasure.
I can't believe you guys don't remember that reference. It's a classic one.
Tony, we're cutting your mic again. I know you've been talking this whole time, but
Fine.
I am a new cEDH player about 6 months into the format. I recently committed to Sisay, Weatherlight Captain, as my deck to focus on. Sup, Mike? Wow.
Yo, get
Fucking
fucked, Sam.
I know, yeah. Sam, the
Fucking
proverbial fourth player here, gets smoked. Host of the show.
I really
Late
am.
adapter.
Yeah, I am. I copied Mike. I wrote his coattails. And I've been grinding games to start learning the lines. My salty story comes from the tournament I just got back from in Columbus, Ohio. I had to miss my usual local gaming store monthly tournament, so I decided to make the 2.5 hour drive from Cleveland to try Sisay out for the first time in a tournament setting. I only had about 10 legitimate practice games with the deck, so I wasn't expecting to perform, but I love grinding tournaments nonetheless. What I was in for was nothing less than death by 1,000 salts. To start the trip, I got in my car and realized a few minutes in that my AC had died. It was the middle of
Nice.
June, and on this day, it was sunny and 80 degrees. So I
Nice.
cooked in my black Toyota 4Runner with leather seats like one of Atla Palani's sunny side up eggs.
We have a lot in common driving to cEDH events without AC.
Yeah, as the person who also has broken AC in their car can relate already here.
Covered in sweat from the drive, I pulled into the crowded LGS parking lot and headed into the store. Once inside, I saw that the turnout for the tournament wasn't as much as I was expecting. Only about 20-ish players had shown up, so there would be 3 rounds of Swiss and a cut to top 4. Despite this slightly salty news, I sat down and waited for the tournament to begin. Hey, I'm going to say tournament and tournament interchangeably. Nobody at me. Let's keep going. The first 2 rounds of the tournament were nothing
Tournament?
special.
Do you mean tournament?
Shut up. I lost both, but put up a good fight, taking each to time and presenting decent win attempts in both games with Sisay plus Dockside combos, but
Nice.
never quite getting over the line.
Got there.
Mentally and physically drained, I sat down for the last game of the tournament, finding out that I am seated in 4th behind Blue Farm in first seat. We'll call him Smeagol.
Oh boy.
YuGiOh in 3rd seat. We'll call her Moraine. And some crusty dickling in 2nd seat that wasn't important. Get fucked, 4th player.
Nice.
I had no time between rounds 2 and 3 at this point and had gone 4 hours without anything to eat or drink as the store's one vending machine was out of service. What's worse is that the machine was right behind the players I was sitting across from, as if beckoning me with a siren call. With the pressure of going 0-3 for the day on my mind, an empty stomach, and a thin veneer of sweat on my brow, I settled in. I mulliganed a pretty decent second 7 with a Soul Ring, Mystic, and Rhystic, and Flusterstorm for interaction. Smeagol throws down a turn 1 fish. 2nd seat dirtles some mana rocks, and then YuGiOh throws out a Grafdigger's Cage. Cue the table groan. I put down my land and threw out my own fish, thinking I was safe to do so with no one countering the previous one. Luckily, I was right, and I passed the turn. On the second go-round, Smeagol plays out their Tymna, then attempts to fetch. Player 2, a.k.a. Krusty D, still get fucked, throws out an opposition agent in response. So they actually did do something. They actually did not get fucked, and they had impact
an
on the
opposition
game.
agent is more than nothing.
Highly, highly impactful. Smeagol is visibly tilted now, saying that he came here to play Magic, not sit and pass turns on all these stacks pieces. With nothing left to do, he passes the turn. Krusty does some more dirtling and passes. YuGiOh, seemingly in response to Smeagol's plea, throws down a Torpor Orb. I could feel the tension on the table rise once again. I was pretty shut out by this board, but had drawn a few cards off my fish, so I wasn't going to lose hope as easily as Smeagol or Krusty. On my turn, I pay the upkeep for the fish and cast Blind Obedience to try and catch up to everyone.
Oof.
After more groans, the obedience stuck. My luck was beginning to turn, or so I thought. I pass my turn holding up Flusterstorm. Smeagol pays for his fish for the 3rd time and immediately looks at me. He smiles with a conniving grin and says, I am the only one who can have a fish at this table, and casts Steel Enchantment on my fish.
Oh my lord.
Taken aback by his dorky ass theatrics, I pass priority and he takes my fish. I was bummed, but I knew I wasn't completely shut out with Rhystic still in my hand. Or so I thought. Smeagol passes and Krusty dirtles for another turn. Moraine begins swinging with YuGiOh and getting damage on me, understandably, as I didn't keep a creature-heavy hand. She passes and I slam down a Deathrite Shaman, and then the Rhystic Study to get my engine back online. Smeagol and Krusty pass, and when it gets to Moraine, she looks at me apologetically, saying,
Oh no, I already know.
I'm sorry, but I'll be needing your study, and casts Commandeer, pitching
I was
2
like,
blue
there's no way they're
Oh,
playing Steel
no.
Enchantment and Commandeer. Then you said the Eureka player. I was like, wait a minute, they do.
Oh no.
Commandeer's definitely there. All tapped out of blue mana. I couldn't counter, and my second draw engine was stolen. After having both my draw engines taken and being effectively stacked out of my game plan, I looked up at the vending machine and contemplated my decision to play such a complex, stressful format. The out of order sign written on a yellow legal pad taunted me from inside the glass. Sitting in front of a row of delicious sodas and iced teas. Was I a total masochist? Then, as if reaching a new power deep inside me from my Saiyan ancestors, Tony's going to be sad he missed that one. I said, enough.
Right here.
Keep it down, Tony. Looking down at my remaining mana and the card that I had just drawn, I realized that I could still recover from this debacle. I drew an Abrupt Decay and had exactly 1 black and green mana up. So on my end step, I played the Decay targeting the Steel Enchantment. Smeagol, looking particularly annoyed at this, said, I guess that happens. And my fish was returned safely to my board, missing both my upkeep and his, staying at only 1 counter. With the fish back online, I was able to claw my way back into the game. Smeagol worked out a Chain of Vapor deal, bouncing all of the stacks pieces back to player's hand, and with a full grip of counters and destruction spells, I was able to keep all of them from coming down. Feeling the rush of the game coming to a climactic close, we came to the final turn cycle. Smeagol was able to get a Dockside out and clone it.
Shocking.
I hate that card.
But thanks to Blind Obedience, he had to wait until his turn to untap the insane 17 treasures that he had just net. I had managed to keep Sisay on the field by this point with Lotho out. Mike, a little nod to you, our little Lotho boy, and had a clone in hand to copy the Dockside on my turn and win the game. Smeagol, knowing this, said to my face, well, if I can't win next turn, I'll make sure you use your interaction on me. And he threw out his Thoracle combo. He had a Thoracle combo in hand. Just fucking play the Thoracle combo. Why'd you play
I'm
the
mad at them
Dockside?
for so many points. This doesn't seem like a great player, but we'll get to that.
I checked with the table and no one seemed to have interaction, despite I'm sure having it. So I used my Flusterstorm to counter his demonic consultation. Smeagol, utterly defeated, sat back in his chair, grumbling more about how he actually plays Magic and doesn't just sit behind stacks pieces. 1 down. The next turn, Krusty went for World Gorger Loop, and I was able to stop that as well. Can't remember exactly how, but he's not important. Finally, out of interaction, we get to Moraine. From the way she had been playing, I assumed she'd spent most of her resources on earlier turns, but she had just been drawing cards off Rhystic the entire game. She promptly played out the infinite turns combo with YuGiOh and killed us all with infinite combat triggers, spinning the wheel of time over and over. The game ended just in time for the round to end. Exhausted from the day, I packed up from the table and went to play a casual cEDH game with friends at another pod. I was able to grab a quick win in the next match, which made the trip not a total loss. But what a monumental grind of a day. The one silver lining to the whole thing is that I ended up striking a deal for my first real high-dollar card, negotiating a good price on a moderately played Gaia's Cradle.
Nice.
Not a banned card.
Yeah. Way to go.
I'm going to commit to Sisay still and keep grinding. If this makes it on the show, then for the love of God, tell people to pack drinks and snacks before they head out to a tournament. Thanks for being such a great podcast and for making the microwave oven of a drive to and from that tournament more than tolerable with your hilarious show. You guys are the best. 10,000 subscribers or bust. Indeed, your newest patron, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
Wow. What a what a saga.
Incredible.
Incredibly written story. Like every once in a while we get a really long one, but it's written so well. I'm like, I don't mind. I don't mind this at all. Like this is great. There's so many twists and turns. There's tension. There's a little commentary. It was fucking perfect.
Yeah, the little bits of like scene setting and everything. It was fantastic. Very Hemingway. Fantastic job.
Yeah, very Hemingway.
Very anyway.
The dead vending machine. I'm so sorry
Taunting.
we haven't advised folks. Definitely, if you go to conventions, if you go to competitions, really in life, honestly, if you're going anywhere, like you could bring a snack and it's not going to hurt you.
Yeah. I think the thing that bugs me the most, obviously Smeagol is the fucking villain in this story for so many reasons.
Yeah.
Like, let me find the exact quote. You correctly identified the fucking dorky ass theatrics of
Yes.
I am the only one who can have a fish at this table. Like, relax, chill for a minute. But I think the thing that bugs me the most about that player is that they're like, well, I play actual Magic and I don't play with stacks pieces. It's like, motherfucker, if you can't deal with a few stacks pieces, you should not be playing cEDH. Like that is my heartfelt feeling about people who don't like stacks and cEDH. Play some removal.
Yeah.
Those things literally do die to removal, and you should have that in your deck, and you should have a plan to deal with the stacks that shuts your deck down. Like that's just how it is.
I mean, even if we want to say they're right, like you played Magic the right way and you fucking lost. So I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Literally.
There's some kind of disconnect going on.
And that, I think, is just, to quote Alan from Mental Misplay, that is corny behavior. Even though Alan does complain about Training the Magistrate a lot.
Yeah,
Oh, that's corny.
that is also corny behavior.
Yeah, that's dino pilled corniness, right?
I will
there.
say the first time he said that, I also thought he was joking, and I was like, "That's a funny joke, Alan. What is your real opinion?" And then things got very quiet in the room.
So it sounds like they didn't win any of their games in
Yes.
the tournament.
They won their
Yeah.
casual one after, right? Oh, I'm sorry, you said in the tournament,
casual
but
one
yeah,
after.
it seems like not in tournament mode.
I mean, it doesn't shock me. I'm assuming that Swiss was matched roughly on record. It doesn't shock me that this Smeagol player was in their last game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
track.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, the minute you said Steel Enchantment, I was like, that's a bad card. And then you said On Mystic Remore, and I was like, that's an awful play. And
Yeah.
now that we're talking about this, yeah, that makes sense. That's the last match that you would play in Swiss rounds.
Yeah. Seal enchantment on a fish is truly awful. You're like, I'm going to take this thing that I won't have in a few turns.
To be fair, I thought there were more counters on it than one or none whenever they took it, but
Same.
still,
Yeah. One is still pretty good, but
not the best use of that bad spell.
Yeah. Steel Enchantment is okay when it's 1 and 2 blue for a Rhystic Study.
definitely that is true. And you
Yeah.
destroy someone else's Rhystic Study effectively. But to
Yeah.
take a fish and then be like, sweet, now I have something that I can invest my mana in, because that's what I was missing on my turns.
Yeah, I know. Fucking way to time walk myself.
Can't wait to draw cards and not pay for them so I can keep getting value off this fish.
That's playing Magic the right way.
Hey, it really is.
It is an interesting thing, though, because I do think, newer players in cEDH specifically struggle on dealing with stacks pieces because the timing on it is so challenging for them. So it's like, do I leave that? Like, that's bad for me. I remove it right now.
Mhm.
They haven't built up the, like, that's bad for me. Is it worse for other people? Like, they maybe don't get that. And they think that people are just playing bad cards that slow the game down,
Yeah.
and then eventually get removed and someone else wins and it all becomes a crapshoot or something. It's like, these pieces make a lot of sense for folks that have played with them a bit and can time removing them to have like an actual impact when you want to.
Yeah, to be fair to that person, I think that answering that question of like, how and when do I deal with these sorts of things is probably one of the hardest questions you have to ask in that scenario.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think when something is shutting you down in cEDH, it makes a lot of sense that your initial reaction is, well, I have to remove that. Like it makes perfect sense that you would want to get rid of that stacks piece and not play against it. I mean, this is something that Callahan from the Mind Sculptor says all the time, is that sometimes you just have to sit under a rule of law for a couple turns.
Mhm.
That kind of goes with every stacks piece. Sometimes you just need to sit under it for a couple turns and like see what other people are doing under that stacks piece and how affected they are, and kind of pick your moment to get rid of it.
Yeah, being patient is always one of the like most difficult lessons to learn in playing Magic in general. Like just knowing how and when to use spells, and it's a very, very difficult part of the game. That is like obviously seems very trivial. Like I have mana, I have spells, you cast them. Question answer.
Yeah.
I feel like the more times that you practice patience in games, the more times you will find yourself paying off for it.
For sure. Yeah. I think most games where I punt, I find that I have pushed too early.
Mhm.
And in hindsight, I'm like, if I just waited another turn, or if I had like not done things main phase on my own turn that I could have done at instant speed on someone else's end step, or, just because I got antsy and I was like, I'm going to do it right now. Like, I
Mhm.
think you can always wait for your moment and exercise some of that patience, and you'll, generally speaking, find that like come back to you with dividends.
So what do you guys think the overall salt rating is on this one?
I have played in tournaments and gone 0-3 with CySA lists and been incredibly hungry, and that sucks. But I don't think that makes me quite as salty as driving in a car with no air conditioning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam is a man that runs hot, cannot endure no air conditioning. Like when I was a kid, my parents wouldn't buy me an air conditioning unit. And one of the first things that I did was like saving money from mowing lawns. And I bought an air conditioning unit for myself when I was like 14. And, you know, little did I know that the reason why my parents didn't want to buy one is because of the insane electrical bills.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they didn't explain that to me. So I did buy myself the air conditioner and I did run it all the time.
Nice. It's nice.
Shout out to my parents.
Shout out to all of our parents.
Yeah, truly.
I feel like it's kind of like medium salt because I think like, yeah, more than anything, like these are like environmental factors. Like everyone is stressed in their last pot of the day. Everyone is hungry probably and a little bit dehydrated. It probably ended up being a little bit more salty than anyone needed it to be.
Yeah. And it's hard to like, that is to some people just the fun way of interacting with other folks. Like
no, I would punch that guy. No,
no, I agree. That's not how I want to be treated.
All right, we can still be friends then.
Right? And I'm not going to try and bring that energy to a situation, but you do have players that like, maybe they've played a lot of casual, maybe they play in a group that is very theatrical, that brings kind of like, you know, D&D group energy into their Magic games. And if that's the case, like they're just throwing what they know on this game here. So like you can't really hate it. It can be way too dorky, as is said in the post, and just like not be your cup of tea at all. And when it's done in a way that is a bunch of game actions that don't make sense, then it starts to really suck and get frustrating. Like stealing enchantment on Mystic, that's just not a good idea. You should probably not do that. The dorky commentary on it doesn't help your case on like why you want to be doing that.
I think it's specifically the Zenith that would push me over the edge in that moment.
Yeah.
I would like to go on record saying I would not actually punch that person. But
No,
for sure.
violence we don't stand for.
Emotionally, I would like to.
And also as a fan and frequent purveyor of corny theatrics, like there is a time and place for that. And I think when everyone is exhausted and super hungry, it's literally like losers bracket does not fucking matter game. Like not the time.
That's not it. That's not the right
place.
spot for that.
Not the time. You really got to feel the vibe at that moment and be like, are these people ready for the tight five that I have ready here? Because I got some bits. I got some bits that I'm about to pop out.
I just saw the Joker movie and I've got ideas.
And I'm going to use them to soften the blow of stealing enchantment. I know what'll really mellow the situation out.
I have to say though, I think honestly, like the commandeer, I would push myself away from the table and take a deep, heavy breath and be like, okay, like I'm not going to lose control right now. This is too ironic, but everything is going to be fine.
But also the commandeer kind of makes sense.
No, I mean you have to expect it from them. It's just
commandeer is a good play,
and that's the way that you deliver that news. Like, hey, much. I'm sorry, but I do actually have to commandeer this. Like that player gets it, and look,
totally
they won.
I expected YuGiOh players in the same boat when they said that shit about the steel enchantment. They're just like, oh my god, eye roll. I'm glad that wasn't me.
Yeah.
And they saw the commandeer come up and they're like, ooh, rough. I'm gonna make this person upset.
I'm sorry, little one.
I love that scene in Yu-Gi-Oh.
It's really just like when Bandit Keith tried to kill Joey Wheeler in the cemetery.
I'm wearing an American flag bandana right now.
Part is that all of our Yu-Gi-Oh references are definitely like first 10 episodes.
I don't know anything else. I only barely know these names. Green Eyes Pink Dragon. I'm sure they did that evolution somewhere down the line.
Yeah, at some point for sure. Yeah, the 69 Eyes 420 Dragon, I think was.
Give me that dragon's number. I bet it's 69 420.
Tony, you might be out of a job. This is a really funny episode so far.
Hey, that sucks. I love being on this show.
Yeah, I feel like this is the ultimate olive branch between our two podcasts. This hilarious episode.
I might come around to not hating you both and considering you mortal enemies of mine.
Yes, it paid off.
Don't worry about it too much, Dan.
All right, should we jump into our last salty story of the day?
Let's do a last one.
Let's do it, guys.
Let's fucking do it.
All for what and what for all.
I think I set these up not intentionally, but I think this is the saltiest one.
Oh,
I just like skimming it while we were just talking. It's pretty salty.
number one was already a record breaker for me. I don't even know what to do now. I need a second seatbelt.
I'm just saying the person who wrote this is incredibly salty. So
Let's see it. Let's hear it.
So this one comes to us from our buddy Nook, and this post is called Pub Stomper Gets Pub Stomped.
I wonder what's going to happen in this one.
Who
You
knows?
might be surprised.
Who knows? I think this one's going to have a bit of a twist ending. And the story goes, hey, you salty fucks. Short time listener, first time caller, Baba Booey, Baba Booey.
Hell yeah. I'm on the caller side.
I'm ready to tell you the tale of a pub stomper who unfortunately picked the wrong table. This happened recently at my LGS's weekly casual Magic night. People usually play middle to high power commander at this event, with good Rule Zero discussion for nice matchups and a good time. We started the night with a really good game full of ups and downs, but one person had to leave early because of a prior engagement. We shared good games and said goodbyes before he headed out. His seat was still permeating with the essence of his body heat when an unknown player wordlessly sat down and pulled out a playmat. We'll refer to this player as Fuckhead for the remainder of the day. We all introduced ourselves, and Fuckhead let us know he was visiting from out of state and had only brought one deck with him on this trip. Cool, not a problem. He pulled out Kaikar Wind's Fury, and he described it as a high-power wheels deck, but stipulated that it was definitely not cEDH. The three of us chose some higher-power casual decks, shuffled up, and began to play. The start of the game was like any other, aside from Fuckhead bemoaning that he had a slow start. Red flags started flashing around turn 3 when Fuckhead laid down a Chrome Mox and a Mana Crypt. Talk about Baba Booey. along with a Dockside Extortionist. Oh, two of them.
Oh, boy.
He impulse drew a Thassa's Oracle along with a Force of Will, 2 cards he was upset over losing into exile at the wrong point of the game before passing his turn. Another round passes, and Fuckhead lays down a Mana Echoes along with Aetherflux Reservoir.
Uh-oh.
The next 15 minutes are spent watching him create ungodly amounts of mana between Mana Echoes and Kaikar, wheeling and upping his storm count with Aetherflux Reservoir. At a certain point, the rest of us agreed to scoop as an Underworld Breach hit the table. We had some good conversations throughout the game and remained friendly and amicable through the storm. We oohed and awed over his legitimate copy of Wheel of Fortune and complimented him on his deck. Fuckhead was riding high. Little did Fuckhead know that I had a competitive Corvold deck lying in wait within the confines of my bag. My buddy across the table saw me put it on the table, made eye contact with me, and gave me a small nod of affirmation.
It's like fucking Ocean's 11.
Yeah. Take him out. Take the shot.
My buddy, playing an Elf Ball brew he just cooked up and wanted to test, along with the fourth player playing Goblins, were solidly casual players. I wouldn't normally play my Corvold list on casual night, but felt it was our only way of giving Fuckhead a run for his money. The game started a little slow, but the Goblin player managed to resolve a Goblin Recruiter with a Hobgoblin Bandit Lord and Krenko Mob Boss in play. He set a stack of goblins on top of his library with a Muxus Goblin Grandy on top. Oh boy, oh boy. On my turn, I started showing Fuckhead the true meaning of Storm, looping Dockside and doing typical Corvold shenanigans. He stopped me in my tracks with a well-placed silence, but said he had wanted to hold it for the Goblin player's upcoming turn. The Goblin player resolved all of his spells, put over 90,000 goblins into play, and then one-shot Fuckhead with his Hobgoblin Bandit Lord. Fuckhead shrugged his shoulders, said, well, I guess I'm dead, and scooped up his cards. It was getting late, so there wasn't any time for another game, but I'm not sure he would have stuck around regardless. Suddenly less inclined to make conversations, he made his exit. I won the game on my next turn pretty easily through commander damage and an extra combat step, but I consider the casual Goblin player the true winner of that game. What do you guys think? Did I let the salt get to my head when I pulled out my competitive deck? His deck may have been fringe or low tier cEDH, but I still feel conflicted over my choice to essentially pub stomp my casual friends. Had I not been threatening to win, he would have undoubtedly interacted with the Goblin player and began storming off the following turn. I just felt I couldn't let him get away with coming into our local shop to dominate casual players. I hope this was an entertaining read. Cheers, Nook. Thanks, Nook. Yeah, it was. You had us at Baba Booey. That was a really
Yeah, you did have us there, right there.
Had us in the first half, not gonna lie.
Yeah.
It's a
Interesting one.
really interesting one. Yeah, I think the key thing is somebody having one deck, and that really like changes some of the calculus. Like, yes, they brought that. Maybe they brought something that is really strong, and
Yep.
we're hoping to squash other people. Maybe this is very run of the mill for like their normal LGS, and they bring that and then like play against you. Everyone else is just playing slightly lower power than they're ready for, and then you come out and really bring like some big guns to shut them down. So it's a little hard to know without having the full context of like what this player's normal environment is, if they came in with bad intent on this, or if they were really just like bringing what they had to play the game. But I do think that you kind of opted for violence instead of opting for like some of the other options that might be at your disposal.
I don't even know if that's even in question, right? Like,
Yeah. Sounds like you guys have a variety of decks at your disposal. It could have been an opportunity to like lend him something that's more in line with what you all are playing. You know, there's an option there that is not, hey, show me how you handle not being the strongest deck, but hey, show me how you handle playing something other than that deck that you brought, instead of like trying to just one up them. I don't know. I can see why there would be like why you would feel conflicted about doing this. I'm not saying you're in the wrong, but you did opt for the other option.
it is likely overkill, not knowing the exact context of like the mood of everyone and the vibe
Yeah.
of like how everyone was talking. Because like you said, it's a singular deck that this person has. That might just be the way that people play at their LGS. It could very easily just be a factor of like not asking people specific enough questions about their deck when you first sit down, you know, because like at a casual table, I'm very intentional about being like, my deck doesn't have tutors. It doesn't run fast mana. It doesn't have 2-card combos in it. But that's not the way that everyone talks about like pregame conversations, or even if they have one. Sometimes it's just like, oh, my deck's not that powerful. It's not cEDH. And someone also says my deck isn't cEDH. Okay, good. They must be the same level. But I mean, from when that person lost the second time, it seemed like they were really cool about it, right? They just
graceful,
like,
yeah.
They said they just shrugged and they're like, I'm out of the game, which like, I don't know. That's the thing that would make me think this person just plays EDH that way and they just have that one deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that a little bit as well. Like, I mean, it's a tough one. Sometimes I do think pub stomping a pub stomper is kind of like your only out, especially if like you have casual friends that are getting like absolutely smashed on, or if someone's being like a jerk, or I don't know, there obviously are other outs where you could just be like, I don't want to play a game with you and pick someone else. But
yeah, I've had like the LGS end boss who you're like, oh, if that person sits down at my table, like I will do my best to beat the hell out of them because I don't like playing with them because they play like that.
And very often those people come in with a single deck, and that is kind of the defense to be like, well, I only have one deck, so I can only play this powerful deck. I will say, like, there is some question here. I'm not so sure with this person. Like, it does sound like they were pretty chill in the second game. It also sounds like they were kind of gloating a little bit in the first game. I also think it's very suspect when someone sits down and the first thing they say is, oh, it's not a cEDH deck, you know, because that makes me be like, I feel like it kind of is, or maybe it has signifiers of a cEDH deck that someone is going to see early game and you're trying to get out ahead of it. At the same time, I have plenty of friends that play Trash Magic. And, you know, up until this ban, I had friends that ran Mana Crypt in their decks and Dockside in their decks and different things like that. Like, it does exist in this space that we like to call Trash Magic, that high power casual where it's like the line is blurred. And, you know, maybe this person is coming from an LGS that has that.
There's a lot of tone in that phrase, though, of it's not cEDH. Like, if you say, well, it's not cEDH, but it's kind of, you know, like you're implying, oh, it's very close. And sometimes people are saying that to communicate, like, hey, this isn't cEDH, but it is very close. Yeah. And sometimes people are like, oh, this is it's by no means cEDH. And they're saying like, it doesn't have any of the identifiers. So like that phrase alone can be like not very helpful, especially when it's not someone you know and you don't have like a rapport with them to know what they're saying. And we're definitely not going to get that context in a written story as well.
And sometimes they're like, well, it's not cEDH, you know?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's the thing, is that it can mean so many different things. I am a person who plays a Tymna and Thrasios casual deck. The 98 of the deck is $50. But I do have to give people the stipulation every time when I lay down my Tymna and Thrasios in the command zone. This is not a cEDH deck. But again, you do have to give the context of that, because it can mean so many different things. That person did play like Chrome Mox and Wheel of Fortune, they called out. So like those are the kinds of things that like I can definitely understand, like people saying before, and like this person being like, I have had to answer this question before. No, this isn't cEDH. I have a Chrome Mox in my deck, but I'm trying to like cast Mana Echoes with it and do like something silly.
Yeah, I mean, we did also see like Mana Crypt, Dockside, Thassa's Oracle, Force of Will. Like, there's definitely a lot of signpost cards for cEDH, but it's a tough thing because, like, for our play group, the cEDH signifier is incredibly defined. We say cEDH and casual, and cEDH is like meta cEDH. It does include fringe decks, but it's meta cEDH, and casual is literally everything else. So if something isn't a cEDH deck, then it's a casual list. And when people are like, well, that's not a casual card, we'll assess it and be like, well, it's not a cEDH card, so it is definitely a casual card. You know what I mean? So I think like some people just have really strict silos like that as well when they're like breaking up lists. And this can have those signposts and still not be fully cEDH, or maybe it's like a 3 or 4 card combo that needs to pop off to actually have you win. And I don't know. It's a tough thing. I think it's hard without like having the tone of the situation, seeing the lists that are being played, and really, like you guys said, the demeanor of the rest of the pod.
Yeah.
Were you rescuing people in this situation? Did they need a hero to save us?
Music break.
Second line of that song. or was this an overreaction on your part? To me, it sounds like maybe you think it might be a little bit of an overreaction, which is fine. I think it's good that you acknowledge that.
We've all been there.
And I think we've all been there. Yeah, for sure. Mike pub stomps me all the time.
And we're both playing cEDH decks.
Get his ass.
Can't wait for you to play Lotho, Mike. Just bring Lotho.
Yeah. I think he's got legs, man. I think they're short, but he's got them. I do think this is an interesting story as like a case study for the bans, though, a little bit. Like, this story does go a little bit different if there's no Dockside and not Mana Crypt. Like, I don't know exactly the sequence. It doesn't seem to be super explicit on like what was played with what mana and everything. But like, those are 2 pieces explicitly in this story that are identified as enabling the deck to do things that are above the power level of the other stuff in the pod. And how is it answered? By someone else bringing a deck that does run Dockside and does loops with that stuff, So like, it is kind of indicative that like, yes, some of these cards were creating these rifts and these like really imbalanced experiences. And this is precisely those moments where that would show up in these untrusted environments, or like LGS environments, where you have players moving from one area to another area where maybe like the kind of culture of what cards you're willing to play is just different in those places. And without having some level of kind of standardization of that, like bringing the ceiling down a little bit does squash your ability to be, the floor to ceiling gap. It gets squashed a little bit.
Yeah,
I think that's a really great point, because I was going to say I tend to be a little bit more prescriptivist in what I view as being a casual or a cEDH list. Not that like if you put Fierce Guardianship in your, I don't know, whatever trash commander deck, that automatically makes a cEDH.
Don't
but
call
like,
Ovika trash, dude.
Thank you. But like having that like
I'll call it trash.
a higher consistency of free spells, big ramping, cheap costing artifacts and things like that. Those are the kinds of things that push that gap way wider to a situation, like you said, where like it creates more field bats because the floor to ceiling can be such a wider gap where it's just kind of more ambiguous what kind of EDH you're playing when cards like that can really create such a wide gap exist.
Yeah, and just breaking down the turn sequence, we have a turn where this player plays a Mana Crypt and a Dockside. And then on the next turn, they resolve a Mana Echoes and an Aetherflux Reservoir and have mana to spare to flip a wheel, which, granted, they could have ramped a bit with the Mana Echoes, but that's 2 very, very powerful pieces of ramp that were recently banned, leading into playing 2 4-drops on the next turn. And it sounds like pretty early game. You
Yeah,
know, this
like
is this is the beginning, like maybe turn 3, this is happening. It sounds like based on the sequencing here.
regardless of anything else, like if I saw someone taking those game actions, my first thought would be, oh, we are sitting at this table with like different intentions of how we want to play this game.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Because if I'm resolving Mana Crypt, Dockside, Mana Echoes, Etherflux Reservoir, I want someone to have removal for one of those 4
Exactly,
things.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's going to make the game interesting. I don't want them to have it, but I want them to have it a little
No, but
bit,
you
right?
don't like, there's a reason you don't just goldfish your deck in front of the mirror all day, right? Like, that's not fun. Like we were saying earlier, like, get rid of Dockside because that makes things more challenging and makes those victories feel like more like a victory because you like really had to put some work into it.
Yeah. And like there's one world where they're playing these things and then, you know, it's mentioned in the story, like admiring the real Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah.
Like there's one world where they're like, look at my real Wheel of Fortune. And then there's another where the other players that are disengaged and dead are like, hey, at least I can look at pretty picture. And, like, that's nice. That's a positive, not like a downside. It depends on if it's showboaty or not.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely depends a lot on tone in this one.
If they're like, all right, storm count is 18 and I'm going to cast this grape shard out of my graveyard. Did you guys see this Wheel of Fortune while I'm talking?
Yeah. And I'll play this Wheel of Fortune. Real, by the way, of course.
Look at it. Look at it. Look at the back.
Yeah, don't touch it. Don't touch it.
Near mid front, LP back.
LP back. Near mid front, LP back was my nickname in high school.
Yo, I've seen those cakes. There's no
Heavily played, dude.
Yeah, these
Heavily
cheeks
played.
are heavily played, my
in the
friend.
back.
This cake is heavily played. Looking near mint, but you
this
know it's
cake is heavily played.
played.
You say that like it made some sort of sense.
Hey,
And yet
hey.
we all know what that means.
And yet it makes very good sense.
Only because I know the same as a theater major.
No, I was environmental engineer.
Yeah, whatever.
Please,
Same
Just a
thing.
theater
Same thing.
nerd. Just
please,
a
I'm
theater
a dirt
nerd.
scientist. Please.
And yet here you are hosting your YuGiOh podcast.
I know.
Get him,
Dude,
Get him.
it's just like when Bandit Keith tried to kill Joey Wheeler in the cemetery. It's just like it.
This is just like that singular frame of Yu-Gi-Oh that I can only half remember, and I'm going to stop referencing now.
What do we think the overall salt rating is here?
This is a very confusing salt. I think like we did a really good job of breaking down like the different elements here. Like let's all pat ourselves in the back first of all. But I think it's confusing. Like clearly the first game is salty for the casual players because there's a big power imbalance. But I do sense that like salt of regret from our buddy Nook here from the pub stomping. I will say like I think one of the nice moments here is that if this Kaikar player truly is pub stomping, it's a nice moment that the Goblin player was the one to knock them out of the game and not the Korvold player. I do like it when that happens,
Definitely.
where it's like, hey, I'm using my cEDH deck not to pub stomp the pub stomper, but to kind of like keep them in check and allow the casual lists to shine a little bit at the table and have their moment. I think that can be very cool when when that happens. If I played it this night, like if I was Nook or one of Nook's friends, I would leave this game night with a bad taste in my mouth. I also think that if I was this traveling player, I would leave with a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like all 4 players in this scenario during both games would probably walk away saying that's not the game that I wanted to play.
For sure. Yep.
That's what I was getting to earlier too, of like, if you're committing to playing this second game, like don't go scorched earth. Like look for the ways that are going to make the second game closer to the experience you want instead of farther from the experience that you want.
Yep.
Yeah. Like you said, Sam, there can be something nice to like the layup of like, all right, we're in this together. And now this Kaikar player is the arch enemy. I don't know how nice that is if the Kaikar player really isn't in on the scheme. But
Yeah.
like, you know, if you can have that sort of like teammate moment, that's kind of nice. But it is probably a little bit overkill.
Well, it doesn't feel natural, but is it that time of the week?
Mike, I think it is that time of the week.
What time is it, Sam?
Tony, it's the time of the week that comes every week.
Every fucking week, baby.
Tony, you sound like you have a cold.
It's the time of the week where we say, Mike,
Back.
what's the
Yes.
salty card of the week?
The salty card of the week this week is
In the arms of the band list, Far away from here, Mana Crypt, Dockside, and Jeweled Lotus, and I guess Nadu if you care. Sorry, Tim. They were pulled from our deck lists in that September ban. In the arms of Rule Zero, I hope you find some comfort there. And of course,
Damn.
that's Angel by Sarah McLachlan.
Snaps.
I can
Snaps.
picture the sad-faced Dockside sitting in the kennel.
You write those, right?
I do write those.
I will say right now, this is very real. As a poet, I was impressed by From the Wreckage to From Our Deck List. I thought that was very clever.
Thank you. I try to like squeeze in as much slant rhyme as I can.
You're really good at it. I honestly think like that's an impressive one because in my head I was like, what are you gonna do for that? From Our Deck List. Very nice. That's good. That's good shit. That's good shit.
It's so funny because my wife and I talk about this all the time. My whole life is just making up little songs all the time. Like when Caroline and I first started dating, I would sing funny little songs about her all the time. When we got my cat, I would sing funny songs about my cat Zucchini. And now that we have our daughter Evelyn, I sing goofy songs about her all day. I'm just singing song parodies like constantly. And mostly, I work through all the bad ones with like the people in my life, and then the good ones make it on the show. So
yeah, I mean, how many things rhyme with zucchini?
Man, you'd be so surprised.
So teeny.
Yeah, so
that was my
teeny.
first thought. Yep.
Yeah.
Not a meanie.
She's a queenie, but usually we call her Zook.
With their little beanies.
She's got little beanies. Yeah, we call her the Bean Queen or Zook. So there's a lot of different other rhymes that you can do there.
Have you ever thought about calling her Zuck?
I don't call her Zuck unless she is scraping my social media for AI learning algorithms.
How often do you think she does that?
She has claimed in front of the Supreme Court that she's never done it. So
we know at least one time when Russia paid her a bunch of money.
How do you think Sam can afford to live in that 3-story
house? With this Kremlin kroner that I'm spending. I think kroners are Danish. Anyways.
It was very alliterative, though. I was going to give you the best.
The ruble.
I had to say it. Anyways, Mike, what is the salty card?
Well, thanks, Sam. That was a lovely salty song of the week.
Thanks,
the salty
Mike.
Card of the week, we're doing a little bit of a mix-up, something special here. There was a new salty card list that was published by EDH Rec. We're not going to do a full intro about that in this episode, but we are going to be using it for a lightning round game where we try to guess the sum total of salt card rankings of the 4 cards that were banned. So I am asking the sum total. So if they were, cards 1, 2, 3, and 4, you'd have 10, for example.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
He's right.
The math does check out.
The math checks out. So, where do you think these 4 cards add up to?
Of Mana Crypt, Jeweled Lotus, Dockside, and Nadu?
Exactly.
Ooh, wow. From the new list.
From the newest list.
I remember the last time I was here and we did this, I was extremely surprised by... I think it was Gaia's Cradle that we did that time, and I couldn't believe how high it was. So I feel like I'm going to get this wrong. I feel like Sam's got this on me for sure. I feel like Sam is also often right in these. It feels kind of cheaty. I don't know how many monitors Sam has open right now.
I'm like taking notes on the side right now.
I was going to say, Sam's not been looking at the camera the whole time.
He's just doing
the math.
He's looking it up on his phone. Yeah, he's looking it up on his fucking phone and entering it into the calculator app.
I hope listener at home as well, make sure you add this up. Take your guesses. Guess on all 4 of them where in the top 300 salty cards you think they are. They're all in there. And then what the sum is.
Okay. I have a guess.
All right. I've got my answer.
All right. Sam, what is it?
So I think the sum total of all the salty scores in the new salt rankings for these 4 banned cards is 105.
Dan, how about you?
My guess was 82. Not a huge swath of difference there.
Sam takes it. It is 100.
Wow. So you don't do Price is Right rules. This is kind of fucked up. Rival
We
podcast once
don't.
more.
He just did the fudge the numbers enough so that they don't think I exactly calculated it.
Well, I'm glad I didn't just automatically guess 69, I guess.
Okay, so
Let me
part
think
two.
about this.
Let me think about it. 69.
420?
It might be 420.
Tony.
Thanks,
Tony, put that out. You can't smoke that.
All right. So part two is which of the four do you think was the saltiest and where do you think it was on the salty cards?
Would you like to go first, Dan?
Sure. So I just made all of this up off the top of my head right now. Let me look at my calculator app once more. I think I guessed that Mana Crypt was the saltiest at 6, but I don't really believe in my heart that's true. I think Nadu, people probably hated Nadu more than they hated Mana Crypt by my guess. And then what number did I think it was? I'm going to make up a new one now because I think I guessed 20. Actually, no, I'll stick with 20. I'll say 20.
Okay.
Nadu is number 3.
Really?
You son of a bitch.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Why'd you look it up?
I just already knew that.
Whoa,
Unfortunate.
number 3. That's wild. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Nadu's
number
number
three.
3.
Man, what a
Number
bunch
three.
of babies everybody is.
Yeah.
I know.
It was Nadu at number 3, Dockside at 14, Jeweled
Oh,
Lotus
really?
at 37, and Mana Crypt at 46.
Okay, so my guesses were Nadu at 3, which I obviously knew, Dockside at 12, Mana Crypt at 40, and Jeweled Lotus at 50. Pretty good.
I also had Dockside at 12, and I had what was the one at 46? I had it at 44.
Mana Crypt.
Mana Crypt, yeah.
So interesting.
Well, thanks for playing the extra special bonus round of Salty Card of the Week.
I appreciate that. I feel like we've covered these cards enough in the earlier half of this episode. Apparently, they make some people salty. I will say it is very funny to have the number 3 saltiest card on EDH Rec just be banned like a week after the new salt rankings come out. They're just like, you can't fucking play that anymore.
I'm kind of blown away by that. I didn't realize that people just played it so much, I guess. I don't know. I played Tim twice on it, and I faced it a couple of times in Vintage Cube, and I was like, whoa, that deck beat the shit out of me, just like every other Magic deck. I don't know.
Yeah. I do think that other formats sometimes leak into the EDH Rec, like
Yeah.
salty score. So we could be getting some kind of carryover from the whole Modern fiasco on
This
it.
is something that I posited on the Herald's Horn to the co-host, is that like I kind of am under the belief that if we didn't have this announcement where they very clearly, like, I think like Mana Crypt, Jeweled Lotus, Dockside Extortions, these are the ones that like this is really about.
Yeah.
I wonder if Nadu could have survived a lot longer, and maybe so long that it just like kind of faded into the obscurity of powerful
snuck
Magic
under
cards.
the radar. I think it could have.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think like in the grand scope of Magic, so many cards are powerful and annoying. There's going to be a new, more powerful and annoying card somewhere down the
Yeah.
line. There's always going to be that card that's just fucking annoying to play against.
It's the one that was the least surprising because people were kind of grumpy about it anyway,
Yeah.
for a bunch of reasons.
It makes sense to do it right now and not in like 6 months from now and just be
Yeah.
like, oh, actually one more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was talking about it with Mia and Beezy the other day, and they were saying that like it's probably just a card that could have been like social contracted out of most EDH games, like Turgrid and shit like that. And
Yeah.
I think that's true. Like I think Nadu, I mean, it's an annoying list to play against. It takes up a lot of time, and it's extremely clunky. That's my big gripe with it. I think the design is very clunky. You know, I think it would have just vanished after a lot of people played it a few times and got it out of their system. And most play groups like started to target it down or push it out of their play groups and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I think you're right, Dan. I think it was like, hey, well, we have this B&R announcement, or I guess it's just a B announcement for Commander. We have this B announcement. Do you want to be this Nadu? You know?
Emma did bring up a good counterpoint, though, that like it does just sort of have the same problem as like Bridge from Below and Modern. Like even if like something happens, like if you ban something else from the Bridge from Below deck, you might make Bridge from Below a bad card for a while, but inevitably they'll print another thing that just makes Bridge from Below really, really good. So like how long before we just get another thing that breaks Nadu, and then like that's another just rouse of like popularity that it gets. So that's a fair point as well.
They can't ban Lightning Greaves realistically.
No, that's like such, not as much as like Soul Ring or anything like that, but like that's like I think a pretty emblematic Commander card.
I agree.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that like ban strategy is interesting because they do use that in a lot of other formats where they're like, well, we won't ban the card directly, but we'll ban like, you know, we won't ban Nadu, but we'll ban Shuko. A lot of people thought that was what was going to happen in Modern. You know, turns out they kicked Nadu right out. But like, in Commander, there's so many things that you can't fully ban around it because it's just so many cards that would get included in, you know?
And like I think it's okay for some cards to just be overpowered. Like
Agreed.
just all formats are like that. If you look at Vintage, like Mishra's Workshop is a card that would probably be banned if they printed it now and like put it into the system. But it's such an integral part to like a huge archetype and what makes Vintage its own format. And the same thing with Wasteland and Brainstorm and Legacy. Like these are just cards that have like always been around. Not to say that like that should make them infallible, but like it's part of their identity for better or for worse.
For sure.
Well, that wraps it up for the salty card of the weeks.
Probably.
So thanks for playing.
Well, thanks, Mike. That was a lovely salty card or collection of salty cards that we will never hear from again.
Yeah, screw those cards.
Dan, do you need to like take a sip of water? Your voice just sounded really weird.
I was doing my Tony impression.
Oh, sorry. I was no budding.
Was it not good?
The tone was still perfect, but the content was
What do you mean
drastically different. Tony is so shook as an Obnixilis player. He's like, whatever will I do? I can't ever play turn one
really
Obnixilis anymore. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I guess like shout out to Tony. Mike and I are so positive about the current state of things just because we're like big brewers.
Yeah. Oh no, I have to deck build.
Yeah. Oh no, I have to innovate. That sucks. Man, these boundaries sure are making my creativity fire. Tony is distraught and hates the bans, and but sucks to suck. He's fucking traveling right now, so he doesn't get to share his perspective on this episode.
Yeah, get smoked, fourth player.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Get fucked, fourth player. Sorry, Tony. Well, Dan, thank you for joining us in the Howling Salt Mine today. We really appreciate it. If people want more of that Dan Moderately Anonymous MTG content, where can they find you?
I think the best place you can find me is by unsubscribing from this podcast and subscribing to the rival podcast. Oh yeah, I know I said it.
Wait.
If you like perspective on Magic news and things like that, things going on in the gaming industry in a very like topical and up-to-date fashion, go check out the Herald's Horn podcast wherever you can find podcasts. That is me, Cal Jones, and Emma Partlow, two writers from TCG Player, discussing Magic, the news in the gaming industry, and all sorts of fun stuff like that. You can also find me on YouTube, Moderately Anonymous MTG, as well as Twitch under the same name. I'm on all the social media platforms, but I talk the most shit on Twitter.com. And yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is a fabulous time as always to hang out with you guys. I was very, very excited to be asked to come and hang out with you and talk some shit about the ban list.
Yeah, we appreciate it, Dan. It was great to have your perspective on, and it's always just a fucking chuckle fest, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna have a lot of fun editing this episode, mostly because I just get to listen to it a couple more times. So, but we thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. We'd do it anytime.
And thanks to all the other prospectors out there for tuning in every single week. We got to shout out our Salt Packet Plus tier members. And this week we have Thoughtsmas Prime, Rothbox, Sire Speedy, Bobo Fett, Brimstone, Captain Cross, Elgo Fogel, Clearbrook, D. Beeson, Gilgamesh, Doug's Dad, Bark Bark, Pez, Swankub, and The Quiet One. And thanks to all the other prospectors that tune into the Howling Salt Mine every single week. We hope you have been doing well this last week, being kind to each other. There's a lot of bullshit going on right now. People stressed out about this ban list. The important thing with Magic is the gathering, this hobby that we love. The game will heal. It'll do fine. If you really want to play those cards, rule zero them in your play group, whatever. As long as you're enjoying the game and not hurting people or sending people in the RC really, really shitty emails, then you're okay with us here in the Salt Mine. And if you're looking for more Howling Salt Mine content, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Howling Salt Mine. We have our Extra Salt series, which is our once a month bonus show. We have the Stray Grains, all the fun tangents that don't make it into the show. We put them up on Patreon for all of our patrons to listen to. You can also listen to our Off the Rails series that we have. Jump into the Discord, chat with us about spoilers, chat with us about all this Magic drama that's been going on. Or don't do any of that and just post pictures of your cats. And I will really, really love that too.
Yeah, do that.
Another way you can support the show is to check out our merchandise on Bonfire, our playmats on Jank Mats, and buy our custom Dragon Shield sleeves that we sell on our own website, thehowlingsaltmine.com, or howlingsaltmine.com is also going to get you there. Also, send us your salty stories, whether you're sending them to our website, where we have a nice form on there, a little intake form that you can fill out, or you're sending them directly to our Gmail at thehowlingsaltmine@gmail.com. It's all going to get over to us. So send those in, and we will put them in our big bag of tricks, mix it up every single week, pull out 3, and read it. and have a good time doing it. You know, we're going to have a good time while we do it. We have fun. We have fun here. Another way you can support the show is to give us a 5-star review in your favorite podcast app of choice, whether that is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, whatever the fuck you're listening to us on.
Maybe YouTube.
By this point, we actually might be on YouTube. We're going to start putting the show on YouTube. I'm going to just kind of silently do it. And we're going to see how it goes. And if it sucks, we'll fucking take it off and we won't be on YouTube anymore. So be nice to us.
That's how you get them.
Yeah, please be nice to us.
Everybody clap.
Please be nice to us or we'll go away. And lastly, we got to shout him out, our buddy Devin Burnett, for giving us our beautiful podcast art. If you're ever in Asheville, North Carolina, hit him up for a tattoo because he's a really cool guy. 10,000 subscribers or bust. Thanks, Tony. Indeed. Thanks again, Dan.
Wait, I have a bunch of other things to say.
No. Cut his mic. And as always, stay salty and don't forget to draw an additional card during your draw step.
It's the Howling Salt Mine. The Howling Salt Mine.
You don't need to be good, Dan.
No,
I'm just gonna frown. That's the entire level of repercussions that you'll get.
You'll think worse about me though in your private life. I know how this works. I know how it works.
I won't even think worse
I
about
endure
you
this
because I'll think it's funny. I will just poo-poo on you because that is someone must do it.
Yeah. If the recording sign was off, Mike would be right there with us, He would be saying some things.
Are we recording right now?
Oh yeah.
Oh no.
I'm about to crack into this.
A brewski? We got a brewski over here? We got a brewski for my broski?
It's a Golden Frieza Ocean Bomb passion fruit flavor anime drink.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Is it carbonated or not? What kind of beverage is this? It's
I have no
clearly
idea.
Frieza flavored.
It's lightly carbonated. It does not taste very good. Now that's an important part.
Well, the Frieza fights a bunch of people and would be all sweaty, so that would make sense if your Frieza flavored drink tasted bad.
Yeah, it kind of tastes like an alien sweat. Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Wait, hold on. Now we're talking.
Should we jump into it, Mike? Do you need another minute of vamping to stuff your filthy gullet?
My filthy hole. No, I'm good.
Okay.
Good. Yes, Andy. This is inspiring.
Yeah.
My filthy hole. Oh,
It's
my Lord.
it's all we know how to do.
Crazy twist. We all play captain now.
Oh no! Wait, is Captain the racist one?
Captain's the awful, like no universe beyond one that like didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, but there was one of them that was like the truth social of
Yeah.
Commander variants.
Captain became that. Captain did
Okay.
become that.
It's not inherently that, I understand, but
Not
one
inherently that,
became
but
that.
it did become that like within a couple days.
Nice.
That wasn't part of the rules. It's just for some reason who it appealed to.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It just lined up really well.
Actually, can I pause for like 45 minutes so I can take a nap and then we can get back into this?
I'm down.
Yeah, of course.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'll keep my camera on if you guys want to watch.
Yeah, of course. I thought that was okay, good. I thought that was part of the deal from the beginning. That's
Yeah,
why
of course,
we
of
were
course.
that's why we were okay with it.
All right. Well, it's 45 minutes later now.
Yeah, we're back. Wow. Dan, I must say, you did that weird. That was a weird way.
You don't sleep like that?
I've never seen somebody sleep like that. No.
Well, let's
that
not
was
talk about
weird.
it. Let's just get into the
weird.
the
All right,
stories.
let's I don't even want to think about it anymore.
I don't want to sound like a weirdo on the internet.
I'm trying to get that image out of my head. Let's talk about some salt.
No comment.
All right.
Since my eyes rolling, I was thinking of sentences.
We've already cut so much content from this
Yeah.
episode.
That one.
We
I know.
cannot cut any more. We probably will cut more, but we shouldn't cut more.
You have my permission to keep a head joke.
Oh yeah, I will keep that.
Santa will give you a little smooch on the lips at Christmas.
So
I appreciate you not making the noise.
I did make the noise. Did Zoom cut out the noise?
Did you?
Nah, it
Oh
didn't
yeah,
come
no,
in.
it cut it out. It didn't make
Yeah.
it.
Oh man, I made such a loud smooching sound. No wonder
That's
Zoom was
why.
like, Zoom was like, yeah, you can't fucking
No,
get that.
not that.
They will not hear this.
Not on my
No,
watch.
definitely not.
Thanks, Zoom. Thanks, Zoom, Tony. Agreed.
Good addition, man. Nice. Good yes and.
Thanks, dude.
I get Cal with that every time.
I'll fucking cut that out so I
Awesome
sound
co-hosting,
smart.
dude.
I'm gonna cut that out so I sound smart. But it'll be a blooper, so the real diehards will know that I'm not
Nice.
smart, and they already do know that.
Extended cut of my stupidity. Listen, guys, we can resolve your friendship squabbles after the show.
No, that's what this is for. That's what this time is for, Dan.
Yeah, Dan, could you keep it down? Can you keep it down, please?
I've got grievances too.
You can
Tony.
step away for a little while if you need to.
Oh man.
Sam is always bullying me.
Tony's gonna love listening to this episode and providing edits on it.
Yeah.